What's up, YouTube? Welcome back to Burger Rights. I am Aaron John Steinberger, an aspiring speculative fiction author, and today we're going to take a little bit of break from Camp 9 or Rambo Prep, and we're going to talk about the 5 tropes in science fiction that I know and love. And this will help me process some things, and talking about it will help me sort of refine some of the ideas that I'm working with for my project. But I thought I'd let you guys have some part of the fun, all 10 of my subscribers and anybody else who has decided to swing by the channel. These 5 are not in any particular order. However, they are just things that I have found that I love and things that I am looking at for either my book or for other projects. Yeah, so let's get to them. First up is the Planet of Hats trope. Now, the Planet of Hats trope is the trope where everyone on a planet is one thing. So let's say like the Klingons in Star Trek are all a warrior race. They all believe in the works of Kahless, and they all wield a batleth or matleth in combat and will go through their life trying to gain entrance to Sto-vo-kor and die in battle. So that's just one example. Now, the reason I like Planet of Hats is because science fiction is supposed to be a mirror through which we can view humanity and tell human stories. And so in order to do that in science fiction, we oftentimes have to create dark mirrors for ourselves. Sometimes it may be like a dystopian society where they are like humans, except they live in this dystopian society and everybody. So we get to see what a large-scale Nazi regime would be like, for instance. Actually, that is a Star Trek episode. It's actually the premise of the Cardassian Bajor occupation that is the prelude to Star Trek Deep Space Nine. I digress. It is a great trope that I love because it allows us to tell those human stories and it allows us to dissect ourselves as much as it does allow us to dissect that society. Next up, we have time travel. Whether it is going back to the 80s to save the whales so we can save the future, or going back to the 50s so we can kiss our mom before the Enchantment Under the Sea dance, I love time travel. It is one of those things that gets the brain working. One of the more modern movies that I like that deals with time travel is Looper, where a man has to kill himself from the future, and that is how that guild of assassins deals with the people that no longer are able to work for them or have betrayed them in some kind of way. I find those types of stories fascinating. Most time travel stories have to do with the idea of going back and fixing something, or the idea that going back and fixing something can alter the future and how that alters the future. It is a way for us to engage in a sort of alternate history. Sometimes it's an alternate history for the character, sometimes it's an alternate history for our world, but inevitably it is a great concept and I love it. It is one of those things that gets the brain working, and oftentimes it can lead to some interesting character choices if they know that what they do changes the past, or if it's one of those things like in Endgame where inevitably the timeline will just create an altered timeline, or it'll course correct as something like the Valiant comic Time Walker series where it's a self-correcting timeline. I just think that time travel is great. Next up, we have faster than light travel, whether it is the jump style FTL of the Dune series where spice melange powers the FTL drives of that universe, and so the spice must flow, or the warp drive of Star Trek. It presents an interesting concept because, one, you need something that is powerful enough to bend space and time or alter space and time in a way that our known laws of the universe can function differently. And I find those stories, those elements in stories, to be extremely useful, not only from a perspective because something like spice melange has other benefits to it within that world and also drawbacks. And it gives whoever holds Arrakis political power beyond their wildest dreams. Versus in, again, Star Trek, warp drive is something that can be used to solve a myriad of problems, not just bend space and time, in order for the heroes of the story to jet across the cosmos. Now, some people think that FTL is an unrealistic thing, and so they don't like it in stories, well, here, let me tell you, I am not one of those people, and I love FTL. It is one of my favorite things. Next up, we have the semi-feudal future. Now, most of this got started with Frank Herbert's Dune, even the Battlestar Galactica remake, 12 Lords of Kobol, as well as the original Battlestar Galactica, has some of that Dune-ishness in it. But I like a semi-feudal future, mostly because it allows us to not only look at our future and what we might see in the stars and how we structure our societies, and maybe that's not a great thing, but a semi-feudal future lets us look at the past as well and see what made those societies last for quite a while, hundreds of years. The most newest experiment with democracy in our world has only lasted since the American and French revolutions in the late 18th, early 19th centuries. So we as a species are more familiar with the feudal aspects, and it is not unheard of for societies to revert back to what they know and what was successful. And it is not impossible for us to think about us returning to a feudal society for ill or good in the future. And finally, we have robots. Now, you can kind of split this into two categories, for me at least. One is the AI, the artificial intelligence portion of robots, and the other one is the sort of mecha genre. Now, I love AI. I love examining what happens to humanity in the face of the singularity. I also love what happens to AI just as individuals. For instance, Data in Star Trek, he's one of my favorite characters, and I love examining that portion of AI and what's going to happen and asking those questions. Those questions are very important, and we're going to have to deal with them very soon, and they're questions that we've been asking for 100 years and still don't have answers to. The other one is the mecha subgenre. Now, that's stuff like Pacific Rim or the Gundam series or Ultraman or something like that. And I love those stories because they allow us to ask the question, what is the cost of war? And when you're shooting at something and you see a Gundam blow up, you're seeing basically a giant samurai warrior, and that should elicit some emotions and makes it a lot easier to process or a lot easier to get across your message of that war is bad. If that thing that you're shooting at is human shaped and there's a teenager inside of it, I love it all. It's all message stuff. It's all stuff that says something and uses science fiction and humans with these human shaped things to ask questions. Are they alive? Do they have a soul? Are they something that we need to fear? Are they something that we can only use? Are they something that we can abuse? Asimov came up with his 3 rules for a reason. Now, they don't necessarily work, and I would love to hear some debates in the comments, but they're important because they're asking those questions, and I love asking those questions, and that's why I love sci-fi. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed that exploration of my 5 favorite tropes in sci-fi. I had a lot of fun putting together this list and going through them with you guys. If you like this video, like this video. If you like what I'm doing here, then please subscribe and share it with other people. And hopefully wherever you're at, whatever time of day it is or night or whatever, wherever you're watching this on the toilet, please enjoy the rest of your day. Go out there, have fun, and write well.